Hello, everyone, and welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, where we watch the Sunday morning news show so that you do not have to. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Aaron Maté. Thank you so much for being here. What a great way to start the week with us and some of the worst people on corporate TV. And by us, I mean all of us,
Right.
us on screen and then you guys at home, because this is an interactive show where we ignore most of your comments, but sometimes show some of them if they're praiseworthy. And if you're liking the stream, which you should do now to beat algorithmic suppression, welcome.
And welcome. Yeah. And look, someone, River Music. Love being at Icarus Fest and meeting you two. Well, right back at you. You see, this community, it's not just a virtual community. We do exist in real life. And maybe one day we'll do a live show in person.
Yeah. Well, we'll see about that. We all know my skepticism of live podcasts, but we'll see.
Who knows? Yeah.
Maybe if we get enough likes today, who knows?
No pressure, guys.
We're gonna later in the show talk about the latest in the Gaza genocide, but it's worth just at the top acknowledging some of the latest horrors. So just today, as we're broadcasting, Israel's just done a double tap strike on Nasser Hospital, killing at least 4 journalists, all of whom worked for Western outlets. Hossam Al-Masri with Reuters, Mohammed Salama with Al Jazeera, but not a Western outlet, actually, but obviously. Mariam Abu Daka, who's with the Associated Press, and Muwath Abu Taha, who's with NBC. And they were killed at Nasser Hospital. And then when rescue workers came to the scene to try to help the survivors and extract the bodies, they were killed as well. And so the death toll now is at least 19 people last time I checked. That's today. And this is after a few days ago, the UN formally declared a famine in the Gaza Strip. And accordingly, people continue to die. Hundreds of people continue to die of starvation, of Israeli-imposed starvation.
It's so disgusting. Yeah, the double tap strike, as it's known, which is just so sick. It's like beyond sick. They can't do anything like normal level evil. It has to be like twice level evil.
And Mohammed Shahada, who's been a guest on this show several times, he was on Democracy Now! This morning, and he explained that the reason why these journalists were in that location is because they go to higher ground because they have these SIM cards, that the only way to connect with the outside world is to have these SIM cards that pick up an Israeli signal from Israel. And so they're there to just communicate with the outside world. Israel knows that. And so it took the opportunity to do as it's done throughout the Gaza genocide and assassinate 4 more Palestinian journalists, silencing the people on the ground who risked their lives to document the genocide of their people. And now you can add 4 more journalists to the death toll of more than 200 killed by Israel since the Gaza genocide began.
And something makes me think that this is not going to be the breaking, extremely important news that it should be in our Western media.
Yeah. And I apologize. It's actually 5 journalists, not 4, that were killed today. 5. And that's among at least 20 people who were killed in this attack on Nasser Hospital.
Right. Well, yeah, I wonder, let's see how many places regurgitate the lie that these people were Hamas or something. Because that's their other thing that they love doing.
All right. Well, we'll have more on Gaza later in the show. For now, let's turn to the weekly recap for Meet the Depressed.
Good Sunday morning. This week, President Trump welcomed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and European leaders to the White House in his efforts to negotiate an end to the war. But 1 week after that high-stakes Alaska summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, no ceasefire has been agreed to. No meeting between Zelensky and Putin planned, and Russian missiles hit an American-owned factory in Ukraine as the attacks escalate. Back in Washington, the FBI raided the home and office of Mr. Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, searching for classified documents, according to officials.
Oh, no. I thought we were past that era known as Doc Talk, but we're not, everybody. Doc Talk is back. It's a new summer of Doc Talk. Remember how
we never really get rid of it. It just becomes dormant and then it rears its head.
Well, I'll just say this show was one of the only ones to refuse to be swept up in Doc Talk mania. Remember how excited everyone was when they raided Mar-a-Lago? That this is
Yeah.
This is unbelievable. So exciting that Trump was being targeted for stealing classified documents, and this was gonna be the one to bring Trump down. And of course, as we predicted, Doc Talk went absolutely nowhere. But it's back because Trump is now in office, thanks in part to Doc Talk, because he used things like this to rally his supporters and argue to them he was being persecuted by the deep state.
Right.
Now he's back in office, and he's going to go after the very people who cheered on his prosecution, including John Bolton.
And by the way, someone wrote Bolton is a deep state war pig. I want to push back on that. I am someone who I don't eat pork. That's how much I respect and like pigs. They're very smart. They're very cute. And they're adorable. So I think we should not normalize pig hatred, and we should not actually praise. What you're doing is you're actually praising John Bolton by calling him a pig, because he's not cute and adorable. So and smart. So let's be mindful of our language. Thank you very much.
Unless you're like a Raytheon lobbyist, if the person who wrote that is a lobbyist for Raytheon,
right? Then
they want to portray John Bolton in a favorable light because he's so good for business. But otherwise, no.
Yeah.
Let's not insult pigs.
Yeah, exactly.
Against this backdrop, I sat down on Friday with Vice President J.D. Vance at his residence and started by asking him about the raid on Ambassador Bolton.
Oh, well, that sounds really exciting. That's it for the recap, right? That's right, Wilson? That's it? I think so.
That's it.
Okay. All right. Well, stay tuned for more JD Vance.
Yeah,
Love to hear his thoughts on so many matters. But for now, actually, we're going to turn to something rare on corporate TV, which is that we heard from a Russian official, Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov. He also sat down with Kristen Welker. And let's hear what he said.
Legitimacy is another matter, because irrespective of when this meeting might take place, and it must be very well prepared, the issue of who is going to sign the deal on the Ukrainian side.
So you're saying you don't see President Zelensky as the legitimate leader of Ukraine? President Putin doesn't recognize him as the legitimate leader of Ukraine?
No, we recognize him as de facto head of the regime. And in this capacity, we are ready to meet with him.
Okay.
But when it comes to signing legal documents, now you want to have the entire picture, just part of it, which suits you. When we come to a stage when you have to sign documents, we would need a very clear understanding by everybody that the person who is signing is legitimate. And
all right, so Lavrov is basically saying that, we'll meet with Zelensky, we're open to meeting with Zelensky, but we're not necessarily going to sign anything with him because we don't consider him to be legitimate, because Zelensky's term has expired and he's extended it under martial law because the country is at war. I've always thought, look, it's a long history, right? And this whole thing, I think, begins with a coup in Ukraine in 2014 that did not bring in a legit government, because they ousted the elected leader, and then the new president who was installed in his place was not even elected with a sufficient quorum. And then millions of people in Ukraine were cut off from future votes because there was a civil war in which the new coup government, backed by the U.S., attacked the Donbass, where Russia was supporting rebels who were opposing the coup. So it's complicated, but Zelensky was elected in a vote in 2019. And I've never thought it's Russia's place to decide who's the legitimate leader of Ukraine or not.
Right. Yeah. Also, I'm sure there's lots of critiques that could be made about, Putin's legitimacy.
Yeah, sure.
By those metrics.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Elections in Russia are very tightly state managed.
Yeah.
Only basically approved opposition challenges Putin. So yeah, I don't think it's Russia's place to dictate that to Zelensky. And no matter what you think of the issue, if this is Russia's position, they're basically saying that there needs to be regime change in Kyiv before there's going to be a peace deal, if they stick to that.
Right.
Which means, contrary to predictions or to hopes that this thing is going to shut down soon, and I was among those who was hopeful it might happen, I think we're in for a long war at this point.
Actually, Aaron, it's interesting. You just pointed out, it's cool that they have a Russian guest on today. That's something new. I think they've done it maybe once before. I'm not sure, actually. Is this the first time? It's either the first or one of the only, right?
one of the few Russians,
One of the few.
of course, compared to 0 Palestinians. Like,
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, imagine if they applied this to, does that mean one day, maybe in the future, maybe in the next century, we'll see a Palestinian guest on Meet the Press?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing Monday Morning with you for, I think, 3.5 years, right? I think. Anyway, at least, yeah, years. And I don't think we've ever had a Palestinian guest on Meet the Press. Maybe even on Face the Nation too.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. Adam Johnson wrote an article about this, saying that, especially since October 7th, there's been none. It's unbelievable.
It really is.
Like,
Yeah.
the top issue of our time excludes a voice from the people under attack.
Right.
The Palestinians.
They're biased, Aaron. They can't be relied upon to be truthful or objective, unlike Israelis.
That's right. That's right.
They may have had, there may have been one person, like an uncommitted person on one of the shows. But definitely not any significant presence.
All right. Sergey Lavrov, in his interview with Meet the Press, he addressed a very common talking point, which is that Russia invaded Ukraine to restore the Soviet Union. That's Putin's aspiration. And, that belief was fueled when Lavrov trolled a lot of people by showing up at the Alaska talks wearing a sweatshirt with the name of the USSR on it in Russian. So Lavrov addressed this on Meet the Press.
I want to just ask you, when you landed in Alaska, you were wearing a USSR sweatshirt. Were you sending a signal that Russia wants to reestablish the former Soviet Union?
No. We were born in the Soviet Union. President Putin repeatedly stated that those who are not sorry what happened to the Soviet Union, they don't have a heart. But those who want to restore the Soviet Union, they don't have any brains.
So that's an important statement, because it's just taken it's taken as just truth that Putin wants to restore the Soviet Union. And what Lavrov was pointing out is that Putin has long repeated that line he just quoted, that those who don't mourn what happened to the Soviet Union, where, the whole thing collapsed and there's a lot of suffering afterwards, no matter how horrible that system was. It caused a lot of suffering in the aftermath. And also millions of ethnic Russians were then cut off from Russia in places like Ukraine. And that was sad for them, and it created a lot of difficulty. So he's saying those who don't lament that have no heart, but those who want to restore the Soviet Union have no brain. And it's that latter part that gets left out of discussions of Putin. So that's what Lavrov. So the fact he's saying that on corporate TV is significant, because it undermines, it's just a very common talking point. So, all right, let's skip ahead to clip.
I mean, I like the Kremlin.
Oh, you want this one?
No, I'm just saying. I just not a clip. I'm just saying I do like the Kremlinology of the sweatshirt.
Yeah, well, that really set a lot of people off, just that he's wearing that sweatshirt. It's a very symbolic sweatshirt. Okay, anyway, let's keep going with clip 3. We were talking earlier about how we don't see any Palestinians ever on these Sunday morning news shows, and when Israelis come on, we do not see questions like this.
Right.
Russia bombed an American-owned factory near the Hungarian border. I've spoken to people who frankly see that as a slap in the face to President Trump, to the entire peace process, isn't it?
Has she ever said anything like that to an Israeli representative?
No.
I don't think so, yeah.
Well, I would say that those who are sincerely interested in understanding what is going on should know by now that never ever Russia deliberately targeted any sites which are not linked to military abilities of Ukraine.
This is an electronic... Mr. Foreign Minister, here are the facts. Close to 50,000 civilians have either been killed or injured in this war. Russia has hit maternity wards, churches, schools, hospitals, a kindergarten just this past week. So either the Russian military has terrible aim, or you are targeting civilians? Which is it?
Look,
Fair questions.
Yeah.
Can we get maybe one question like that, at least one, to an Israeli official who appears on these shows, very, very frequently, not just like once in a blue moon, like a Russian,
Right. Yeah, it's just so hard to. I mean, it's not like everyone should be asked about the civilians, right? Obviously, civilian death counts are very important. It's just so hard to take anything this person says or anyone says seriously when they are asking questions of Russian leaders and representatives that apply about like 17,000 times more to Israeli ones.
Yeah. Okay.
They don't care. I mean, they don't care. This is an adversarial government, so therefore we care about civilians that they kill. But if it's an ally, then no biggie.
Okay, let's hear one more from this interview with Sergey Lavrov.
The Russian and Ukrainian people to be one nation. In this sense, all of Ukraine is ours. Does President Putin believe that Ukraine has a right to exist?
no, this is not true. Ukraine has the right to exist, provided it must let people go. The people whom they call terrorists, whom they call specious, and who, during a several referenda in Novorossiya, in Donbass, in Crimea, decided that they belong to the Russian culture, and the government which came to power as a result of the coup was determined as a priority to exterminate everything.
But as you also know, a number of those people did not want Russia. A number of those people did not want Russia to invade. Mr. Foreign Minister, do you acknowledge that Russia invaded Ukraine?
Well, democracy is about the people, having a chance to vote. The people voted. The people pronounced themselves. And
did Russia invade Ukraine, Mr. Foreign Minister? Did Russia invade Ukraine?
Russia started special military operation to defend the people whom Zelensky and his predecessor did not consider as humans.
So what Lavrov's saying there is actually important because he's pointing to the plight of the millions of people in the Donbass region who rebelled with Russia's help after the 2014 coup. And it was Ukraine, as we're going to talk about more, that refused to implement the Minsk Accords, which would have given them some autonomous rights, including protecting their culture, their Russian culture, which was targeted in the aftermath of the 2014 coup. So that's what he's actually talking about. Now, this is why I don't use the term special military operation, because you can say that Russia can argue it was legitimate to intervene on their behalf, and Russia was in a tough position. The people of the Donbass were facing attacks by the coup government, but it's like they did invade, and
right.
You can't expect us to call it a special military operation just because you think the intervention was for lofty purposes.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, but of course the questioning here, again, it'd be great if we can get that at least once to an Israeli official.
Right.
Do you acknowledge that this is a genocide? Would they ever ask that? Do Palestinians have the right to exist? Would that question ever be posed to an Israeli official as Israel commits genocide, unlike Russia, which is, killed far less, a fraction of the civilians that Israel's killed in Gaza?
Right. I mean, you for instance, she could ask any Israeli official if they have anything to say about, or if they will admit the fact that they have decimated 91.8% of school structures, or the fact that 94% of Gaza's hospitals have been damaged or destroyed, according to World Health Organization. The fact that, at least 62,000 people have been killed, and that's an undercount, I'm sure. Yeah. So, all of those are questions, just putting it out there, Kristen. So feel free to take them. You don't have to credit us. You could just apply them, ask them to an Israeli. And by the way, it's true. There was a Palestinian guest on Meet the Press, but not Meet the Press, the weekend show, the really significant one. It was the midweek one, which I just think is significant because they couldn't even bring themselves to have one on the main showtime. they did have on Layla El-Abad to talk about the uncommitted movement. But that's
I
it.
can just imagine that meeting. Like, yeah, we're not ready to have a Palestine on the Sunday show, but we can.
Exactly.
I think we're prepared to go with the midweek.
Yeah. But
Like,
here's what we can offer you.
yeah, let's start
Okay?
with the midweek. Let's
Let's
ease
go
it in. We'll start off with something casual,
Yeah.
midweek, no big commitment.
Right.
And we'll see if maybe one day in, I don't know, 2057,
Right.
we're ready for a Palestinian on Sunday.
Prime time. Yeah. It's almost like a date. Like, you don't want to, it's like, all right, let's not get too excited. Let's go. We're not going to have dinner on a Saturday night or brunch on a Sunday. We're going to have like coffee on a weekday.
Exactly. Okay. JD Vance, the vice president, let's hear what he has to say about the state of the Ukraine-Russia proxy war and U.S. efforts to end it.
Ukraine.
Sure.
I had in Ukraine.
Sure.
I had the opportunity to speak with the Russian foreign minister.
I heard.
Yes, he says, as of right now, there's no meeting planned between President Putin and President Zelensky. And he added, there needs to be an agenda first, saying, quote, this agenda is not ready at all. Are the Russians stringing President Trump along?
No, not at all, Kristen. I think the Russians have made significant concessions to President Trump for the first time in 3.5 years of this conflict. They've actually been willing to be flexible on some of their core demands. They've talked about what would be necessary to end the war. Of course, they haven't been completely there yet, or the war would be over, but we're engaging in this diplomatic process in good faith. We are trying to negotiate as much as we can with both the Russians and the Ukrainians to find a middle ground to stop the killing.
So look, all I'll say here is there's so much to criticize the Trump administration for. They are even, I would say, more supportive of Israeli genocide than Biden was, in the sense that Biden never allowed a full-blown famine on his watch and a months-long full Israeli siege that cut off all food and aid. I mean, he allowed a severe blockade that was inhumane and genocidal, but the Trump administration has been even worse in that respect. And of course, Trump attacked Iran on Israel's behalf, which Biden didn't do. But on this issue, this is what the Biden administration should have been doing from the start, not fueling the proxy war and using it as an opportunity to bleed Russia, but trying to bring it to an end. And there were so many opportunities for them to do that. And we all know, as we've covered so many times, the corporate media ignores. There were peace talks early on in the war. Ukraine and Russia reached the outline of a deal. The U.S. and UK stood in the way. So the fact that the U.S. is talking about ending the war, I think, is a step ahead of Biden, because Biden, they had no interest in talking to Russia, not even speaking to them, and they wanted to continue the war. Yeah,
the downside, I think it is important to destigmatize speaking to Russia, and that is one of the things that they're doing. I 100% agree with that. But the thing we have to be kind of skeptical of or wary of or remember is that oftentimes their rhetoric is so much better than their actual policy.
Okay. The problem, though, is we have a corporate media that's like become just enlisted and cheering for the proxy war. So when Trump, especially if Trump's talking about ending it, they're going to be skeptical. They're going to push back, and that's what's happening here. So more of JD Vance.
Oh, one second, Aaron. I have to update something I said. I mean, we should give Biden the credit for overseeing the what was it that Yoav Gallant said? No food, no aid for 2 months at the beginning.
Well, listen, of course, I don't want to suggest the Biden administration did anything good. I'm saying is I don't think they ever allowed a full-blown, months-long Israeli siege that led to famine. Like there was warnings of a famine under Biden's watch, which Anthony Blinken, Biden's Secretary of State, suppressed. Of course he did.
Right.
I'm saying is Trump has taken the sadism to even a new level.
Yeah.
There's nothing good that Biden did. I'm just saying that Trump, in some ways, when it comes to Gaza, has been even more evil.
Just really impressive. Yeah.
Okay. More JD Vance.
To security guarantees, but very quickly, if Russia is allowed to keep any of the territory that it illegally seized, what message does that send to China? Does it give China a green light to invade Taiwan? It's all
about Taiwan.
It's Taiwan, exactly. I'm so glad. I feel like she should be giving Lindsey Graham some credit there.
Yeah, she really should.
That's his line. Yeah, it's like Lindsey appropriation.
What does this have to do with China and Taiwan? Like
Everything, Aaron, has everything to do with it.
So we can't broker it into a war because it sends a message to somebody else, and it's like, so war is about sending telepathic signals to other people. It's very strange.
Yeah,
it's very strange. And of course, like, how about sending a message to Israel to stop committing genocide? Like, we could send that message not by brokering an end to the Ukraine war, just by telling Israel to stop committing genocide, and we could stop arming it. But of course, that message is never contemplated.
Yeah, some messages are more important than others, Aaron.
Yeah. Okay. ABC News did a really interesting look back at the last time Putin and Zelensky met, the last and only time that Putin and Zelensky met. This is in December 2019. This is a few months after Zelensky was elected on a mandate for peace to end the Donbass war that was then going on. And this was also at a time when Democrats, in all their genius, were impeaching Trump for freezing weapons to Ukraine. Adam Schiff was saying that we have to arm Ukraine because we fight Russia over there and not over here. So really smart of Adam Schiff to brag about using Ukraine to fight Russia over there. So anyway, ABC News did a look back at the last time Putin and Zelensky met. And it's amazing to me how we're going to see how even top government officials undermine the propaganda that we see on corporate TV. So first, here's ABC News.
The talks went on for 8 hours, but the summit achieved little. Putin refused any compromise, insisting elections be held in the eastern territories while Russian forces were still there.
Okay, so hear that? Putin refused any compromise. Okay, so ABC News is blaming Russia for the failure of those December 2019 peace talks between Putin and Zelensky. So just keep that in mind. Putin refused to compromise. All right. Now let's hear from Boris Johnson, who was the former British Prime Minister, huge cheerleader for Zelensky and for the Ukraine proxy war. And listen to how he characterized the failure of those same talks. So this is what he said in a recent interview.
You got to remember that Volodymyr Zelensky is not he's not an unreasonable guy. He got elected really as a peacenik. He was out that in 2019 he tried to do a deal with Putin. As far as I can remember, his basic problem was that the Ukrainian nationalists couldn't accept the compromise. And
bam, you see that?
What?
So ABC News is blaming Putin for not accepting the compromise. And the compromise was the Minsk Accords, which would have granted some limited autonomy for ethnic Russians in the Donbass. Here's Boris Johnson admitting the truth, that the problem was that Ukrainian nationalists, as he put it, and notice how he pauses before he says it, because I think he realizes he's like blurting out the truth.
Yeah.
He goes ahead with it. It was them that refused to accept the compromise because they don't see ethnic Russian Ukrainians as equal, and they don't want to recognize their equality in Ukraine, which was the whole point of the Minsk Accords and the whole point of those talks that Putin and Zelensky engaged in. So that's an example of a government official, former government leader, being more honest than our own corporate media.
Yeah, I mean, he also, didn't he say that he admitted that this was a proxy war, right? Then we have this statement. So it's, that movie Liar, Liar with Jim Carrey, where like you can't help but to tell the truth. I feel like there could be a good like movie comedy about Boris Johnson. First of all, the guy's like built and made to be in a comedy, in some kind of absurdist comedy with that hair. It's like, what are we doing, folks? Like, we're wasting it. But can't you just imagine him being like speaking truth, like for whatever reason? I'm not sure we have to figure out what the exact conceit is, but he's like accidentally speaks truths that are inconvenient for the media.
He'd be a great comedy character. He'd be a wonderful comedy character. And so many people, the world would be so much better if so many of our politicians had pursued creative pursuits like acting, where they can still pretend as they do, in public, but they do it in a healthy way, not by lying to the public about wars and like
Zelensky.
but just by lying about like being a fake person because they're acting.
Yeah, Zelensky himself, good example.
Sure. All right. So anyway, that's just funny how like Boris Johnson's more honest than ABC News when it comes to the origins of the Ukraine war. And someone who's not that honest about the origins of the Ukraine war is General David Petraeus. He is a former U.S. commander in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he famously gave classified information to his mistress because she was writing a puff memoir about him, or a book about him. And so he just gave her state secrets.
Yeah.
And of course, got a slap on the wrist for that. Never paid a price. And now he's now on corporate TV as an expert. So here are his thoughts on the Ukraine war.
Joined now by former CIA Director and CENTCOM Commander General David Petraeus. General Petraeus, thank you for joining us this morning. Let me start with that look back. What do you think? Do you think there will be another Putin-Zelensky meeting? And is there any reason to think it would be more successful than that one?
There's not that much right now that would lead us to believe that, I don't think. In fact, out of the last 2 weeks, really, Jonathan, I think what should be clear to all, and I think it is even clear to President Trump, is that despite all of his efforts, again, which we applaud, to end a war, to stop the killing, Vladimir Putin clearly has no intention of doing that unless he's given additional territory, which is heavily fortified, and Russian forces would have to fight for years at the pace that they're going. He wants to displace President Zelensky, replace him with a pro-Russian figure, and frankly, to demilitarize Ukraine, none of which can be acceptable to Ukraine, nor to the European countries and the United States. In fact, by the way, President Zelensky, under the Ukrainian constitution, doesn't even have the authority to declare that certain territory would be controlled by the Russians. That would have to go to a national referendum. So again, I think it should be clear. The obstacle to peace at this point in time is President Putin. And what we need to do is change those dynamics by helping Ukraine far more than we have so far, lifting restrictions on them, seizing the $300 billion of frozen reserve in European countries of Russian money, giving it to Ukraine, more sanctions on Russia, even including the Gazprom bank, and curtailing the export of oil further than we have already.
So in other words, let's do more of the same. Let's do the Biden strategy of authorizing tens of billions of dollars in weaponry for Ukraine and watching Russia take 20% and counting of Ukrainian territory. That's the Petraeus prescription. Putting aside, you know, the whole, all the causes, the whole history. I mean, like, you know, we've talked about that, but it's just like from just a strategically, it's not working. That's not working. And what everyone is calling for is just basically a longer war where more Ukrainians die.
Right.
And these are more working class Ukrainians because the elites have ways of getting out of war. If you look at all the horrific videos coming out of Ukraine, it's like it's working class people being kidnapped and sent off to die. And, you know, not to deny that there are people motivated to fight and to defend their country. There is that.
Right.
But the way it's gone so far is that Russia's winning just because it's such a bigger country. And that's, you know, Barack Obama, when he refused to send more weapons to Ukraine after starting the proxy war in 2014 with the coup, he recognized that whatever we do, Russia will be able to outmatch it. But that understanding is just, it's not welcome anymore in Washington.
Right. It's just a bloodbath.
Yeah.
Built in there. Yeah.
All right. More David Petraeus.
Sorry, guys.
Something else President Trump said this week. This is a post on social media. He wrote, in part, "It is very hard, if not impossible, to win a war without attacking an invader's country. It's like a great team in sports that has a fantastic defense, but is not allowed to play offense. There is no chance of winning. It is like that with Ukraine and Russia." He went on to say that it was Biden that wouldn't let Zelensky wouldn't let Ukraine attack into Russia. First of all, what's your take on what the president was intending to say there?
It's a very valid observation.
David Petraeus like loves Trump all of a sudden because Trump, you know, is hinting that maybe he'll let Ukraine strike deep into Russia with U.S. weapons.
Right.
Now, it's not true what Trump said that Biden wouldn't let Ukraine do it. Biden, on his way out of office, actually let Ukraine strike into Russia with long-range weapons. And the thinking was that with Trump coming into office and talking about ending the war, there was just a limited amount of time in which Ukraine would be able to do that. So Ukraine can go ahead. So
Right.
Trump's critique of Biden is misplaced. And at the time when Biden let Ukraine do that, use long-range weapons to hit inside Russia, Trump criticized him and said, this is terrible. And now, now Trump is seemingly suggesting that Biden was weak for
Right.
not doing it enough. But
Pick a lane, Donald.
pick a lane. Pick a
Yeah.
lane.
Yeah. And it's just so gross because this joke that this is about Ukrainian agency, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. None of this can be acceptable to Ukraine. Who is he to tell Ukrainians what's acceptable to them, especially because they want to end the war? And there's that poll that from August showing 69% of Ukrainians want a negotiated settlement as soon as possible. A Gallup poll. But let's not get in the way of Petraeus's fantasies and war games.
Spot on. And interestingly, as we learned in a story overnight, it's contrary to the Pentagon policy. This is another case where it appears that the Pentagon is carrying out policies that conflict with President Trump's inclination. Now, I can understand why they would limit the use of certain long-range systems against Russia when they think that Russia might still be willing to make a deal. But that should be very clear not to be the case at this moment. And I hope that there will be a review of that policy. Indeed, that was exactly what the Biden administration did in the past. They were overly sensitive endlessly about how Russia might react to something that they provide to Ukraine. And they were restricting the use of the Army tactical missile system and others.
Those overly sensitive Biden administration officials who only very rarely or for such a short amount of time let Ukraine use U.S. weapons to hit Russia. Overly sensitive to a nuclear holocaust. Those Biden people were. So, let's take the gloves off, says David Petraeus.
Yeah. I think they're snowflakes. That's what we should be describing them as.
Yeah. Okay. Adam Schiff, let's hear from him. What are his thoughts on the Trump-Putin summit?
Senator.
Unnecessarily provocative, but they're clearly stringing the president along. And, I think at some we have to start, what's our national security interest? Our national security interest is seeing a strong, sovereign, independent, democratic Ukraine. And measured against that, this summit, I think, was a failure. It didn't advance our interests or Ukraine's interests or that of our allies. Putin walked away with essentially no ceasefire, despite the president's demand for it. He walked away after being on the stage on U.S. soil with U.S. president, literally the red carpet rolled out for him. He walked away out from under the threat of sanctions from the United States. Trump had promised to impose sanctions. So they strung him along successfully. And I think the president, for his part, was correct when he said Ukraine can't win a war if it can't go on offense. But it is the president and the administration that is preventing Ukraine from going on offense by preventing Ukraine from using weapons to attack Russia on Russian soil. So I think it was a real setback for us. Lavrov, no surprises in his statements, except perhaps in his inability to directly refute the idea that they're stringing along the president.
I love how Adam Schiff's main critique of Trump is that he's and he says it with like such wide eyes, like he's like President Trump is not letting Ukraine go on offense, and it's time to do that. Like he wants Trump, just like David Petraeus, to let Ukraine hit Russia with U.S. long-range weapons, as if nothing could go wrong there. And this is the guy who gave us years of Trump-Russia conspiracy theories, then gave us, after that failed, its sequel, which was Ukraine Gate, when he led the charge to impeach Trump for freezing weapons to Ukraine while pressuring Ukraine to announce an investigation of the Bidens. And not only did this hurt Democrats politically, because, for example, Russiagate was a massive gift to Trump for reasons we talked about. It channeled resistance into a dumb conspiracy theory. And then Ukraine Gate, nobody cared about it. Nobody followed it. And by the end of Trump's first impeachment, he had the highest approval ratings of his presidency. And that's Adam Schiff. And he also helped criminalize diplomacy with Russia, which I think helped give us Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So Adam Schiff weighing in on this stuff is just
rich.
It's very rich. It's very
yeah.
rich.
It's funny. Yeah, this is kind of like the Schiff is a good accompaniment to Schumer. You know, Schumer wants Trump to be tougher on Iran. Like both of these people claim that Trump is like Cheeto Mussolini, right?
Yeah.
Unprecedented threat, and they also want him to be more belligerent. Like again, pick a narrative.
Exactly. And maybe Trump has won 2 elections by pretending to be anti-war.
Right.
So maybe, just maybe,
Yeah.
if someone was genuinely anti-war, they could win an election. Imagine that. But Democrats just don't want to take that on because people like Adam Schiff and Chuck Schumer and the like are still at the helm. Okay, speaking of being for against wars, Adam Schiff has thoughts on the raid against John Bolton, one of the biggest warmongers in the country.
About one of the top domestic issues this week, the FBI search of former National Security Advisor and Ambassador John Bolton's home and office. I did have the opportunity to ask the Vice President about this. He rejects the idea that this is political retribution. Do you believe that people need to let this investigation play out and not get ahead of it at this point?
I think this is clearly retribution. I mean, the idea that they just picked John Bolton, a prominent critic of the president, at random. What the president is trying to do here is very systemic and systematic, and that is anyone who stands up to the president, anyone who criticizes the president, anyone who says anything adverse to the president's interests gets the full weight of the federal government brought down on them. So if you're John Bolton, you get your home seized. If you're on the Federal Reserve and you won't lower interest rates, you get threatened with prosecution or with firing. If you're a general, like the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and you issue a report, or your agency does, casting doubt on the success of U.S. military strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, you get fired. If you are the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
I mean, that's true. Trump just fired the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, which had put out a leaked assessment saying that, contrary to Trump's claims, Iran's nuclear program was not obliterated, right? And so that is, assumed to be the main reason why he was just fired. And so what Schiff is saying is true. Trump does fire people who contradict his line, and he does go after his political enemies. The problem is Adam Schiff is the worst possible messenger for this critique because he's the one who led the years-long, or helped lead the years-long Russiagate scam, in which Trump and his allies were framed as Russian assets. And Schiff went up on TV multiple times and lied to the public and said he had seen secret evidence of collusion. So fair critique, horrible messenger.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. And by the way, speaking of horrible messenger, I must be a horrible messenger because, Aaron, do you know we have almost 2,000 people watching right now? Mm-hmm. And do you know how many likes we have?
I'm gonna assume we're at like a 99% like rate.
Well, actually, right now, all right, yeah, we're at we just got up to 947, but that's really not that acceptable. That's like basically 50%. We're gonna need those numbers to be a lot higher. It hurts me more than it hurts you guys for me to have to pause this, but I don't know what else to do. I mean, I'd like to not have to do this, but we're at 1K now. I want to see this by the end of the next clip. I want to see this at like 1.2K.
Unlike Trump, we're not going to fudge the numbers. We're not going to fire the YouTube like counter.
Right.
That's a position. It's a human being who just manually tallies the likes and puts them on screen for us.
Right.
We're not going to fire that person because we run a.
We're not like Trump. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We're not like Trump here. We have integrity with the likes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So don't please appreciate our honesty and don't double tap because I think that makes it unlike it. So if you've done your part, we thank you. And this is directed to all of you derelict people out there.
All right. Well, this week as everybody was melting down about John Bolton's home being raided over some classified documents, my mind went to another story involving John Bolton. Since we're so concerned for John Bolton's, privacy and security, I thought about the time when John Bolton went to the head of the OPCW, which is the world's top chemical weapons watchdog, and threatened his children. And why did John Bolton do that? Because the head of the OPCW, Jose Bustani, was trying to bring Iraq into the Chemical Weapons Convention, which would have interrupted the Bush administration's drive to invade Iraq. And at the time, John Bolton was working for the Bush administration. So I actually interviewed Jose Bustani a few years ago and listened to how he describes his encounter with John Bolton.
I received the request from Mr. Bolton to come to The Hague to have a word with me, and it was a very unfortunate experience. He came to my office, and he stayed there for 15 minutes, not more, and said, I'm here to tell you that you have 24 hours to resign. This is what the instruction I got from Vice President Cheney. And this is it. And I said, well, I don't see any reason for me to resign. My record is impeccable from my point of view and from the point of view of most delegations, and I don't see why I should resign. And he said, well, this is your call. You know where your kids, we know where your kids are, so you have to think serious about that. Which I said, I know, my kids know, and I am prepared to whatever comes. And he left. That was it.
Did you take that as a physical threat against your children?
Well, you can read that sentence in many ways. I read it as a threat. You can interpret it in many ways. My kids lived, 2 of them, in New York and 1 in London. So I did not expect him to mention that fact, because it wasn't called for. We are discussing my position in the OPCW, not where my family was. So it made me very worried and sad, I must confess.
So that's who John Bolton is. He's someone who threatened the children of the head of an international organization because that chief of the OPCW, Jose Bustani, was standing in the way of John Bolton and George W. Bush's drive to invade Iraq. So that's who I thought of when everyone was like melting down this week about John Bolton's privacy. And then in the same interview, Jose Bustani told me that his office, he found that his office was bugged. And he's pretty sure he knows exactly who did it, which was John Bolton and Dick Cheney. So
yeah, he's also openly a bully, right? Like he wished the destruction of the UN office in New York City, right? He banged on the door of a woman he was on some work trip with, like her hotel room in the middle of the night, would not stop like shouting at her. He's just a total sociopathic bully. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not shedding over any tears. I mean, Trump does pick on his political enemies, but this happens to be someone who I'm not too upset about this.
Yeah, and again, the hypocrisy of lamenting the raid of John Bolton's offices when everyone was so giddy over Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate being raided. This was like the greatest thing ever, and no one cared about abuse of power, persecution of political enemies. It was all fine and dandy. So, look, I'm all for intra-elite squabbles. I say let them fight. So, anyway, just a little look at who John Bolton really is. Okay, let's turn to the domestic scene. Congressmember Mike Lawler.
Oh, the best. Yeah. By the way, Mike Lawler is a big friend of Richie Torres, and I actually saw them speak together at the Y, and they were really excited about trying to get the Abraham Accords back up and running.
So Mike Lawler is a Republican Congress member from New York. Yeah. And he has thoughts about, Trump deploying federal troops in, well, first it was Los Angeles, now it's Washington, D.C., and who knows, maybe we'll get more cities coming soon.
Coming to another city near you.
Been discussing with the governor, that is crime. The president of the United States has mentioned New York as another city he wants to look at to deploy National Guard troops. Do you think that's the best use of federal taxpayer dollars? And are you comfortable with that happening in your state?
Well, crime has been a major problem in New York for years. And Kathy Hochul and Albany and New York City Democrats have failed miserably to.
He also has the really annoying voice. I just have to mention that. Okay.
Tackle this crime
do you want
crisis.
National Guard
By the way,
troops?
Kathy Hochul has mobilized Kathy Hochul has mobilized National Guard's troops.
I love sorry, one other thing about his face. It's such a great expression. Look, he gets really annoyed that she's asking him a question.
With the governor, that is crime. The president of the United States is. Do you want
crisis.
National Guard
troops? By the way,
troops?
Kathy Hochul has mobilized National Guard's troops to go into the subway system because of the crime in the subway system. So that has been done, obviously, for the purpose of surging resources and trying to prevent crime. Yeah. When you look at the fact that in New York City, for instance, 80% of gun crimes do not result in a conviction or prosecution, that 80% of these individuals are released back out onto the street despite using guns in the commission of a crime. You look at Washington, D.C., 1.7% of gun crime convictions result in jail time. So when Democrats talk about gun violence, how come they don't want to actually prosecute and enforce the law against criminals who are using guns in the commission of a crime?
No, but that's a local problem. That's a local issue that would need to get changed. But in terms of the question on the troops, you'd rather troops
Margaret,
than FBI agents or ATF agents or DEA agents. You don't want federal agents who are trained law enforcement officers in New York City. You would rather National Guardsmen who have to be trained to police?
No. Don't put words in my mouth. I'd rather all of the above. The FBI, the DEA, ATF. I've met with ATF just a few weeks ago in my office on this very issue of really cracking down on gun crimes.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation there, first of all. So I don't know where he gets some of his stats from, but they certainly are contradicted by, for instance, District of Columbia Sentencing Commission. Their annual report said that for carrying a pistol without a license, 12% of convictions result in jail time. The average jail time is 11.4 months. And of the total convicted for gun possession offenses, 91 of them, of the 424, definitely received jail time. So those stats are just not accurate. Which it's like 21.4% of those convicted of gun crimes receive jail time. But they always, oh, you're muted, Aaron.
No, I was just workshopping nicknames for, lying, lawler.
Lying, lawler, yeah.
Doesn't quite roll off the tongue. Lying, lawler.
Liar, lawler.
It reminds me of that joke from 30 Rock, the rural juror. Remember that?
I never watched that show.
Oh, it's so funny. Like one of the characters is in a miniseries called The Rural Juror, and it's so hard to pronounce. Yeah. Okay, let's turn.
So just remember, everyone be skeptical. Just in general, like they, as we all know, when it comes to Israel, we're used to this, but in many other issues like crime, they rattle off statistics that aren't true.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, speaking of saying things that aren't true, let's turn to CNN's Dana Bash and Rahm Emanuel talking about Gaza. Boy, oh boy, are there some untruths here?
A group of global experts backed by the UN declared this week that Gaza City and its surrounding territory are officially suffering from famine. The Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu posted on X, quote, "This is an outright lie." And the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, responded to the uninformed who claim Israel is starving Gaza. Get the facts. He went on to say tons of food has gone into Gaza, but Hamas savages stole it. What do you think?
We know what Dana Bash thinks. She thinks she agrees with Mike Huckabee internally, but it's been so embarrassing to the extent to which her and Jake Tapper have just laundered Israeli propaganda that they have to pretend to be a little bit objective. So I think
I hope they're getting paid by Israel. They're true believers. I don't think they're doing it for the money, though.
Oh yeah, no, they're just devoted Jewish supremacists. That's what they are.
Yeah, and remember, guys, in case you missed it, not last week's Monday morning, but the week before, it was really great. Was it last week or the one before? I think not last week, the one before. But either way, it was a great moment where Dana Bash was so angry at Bernie Sanders for saying that the starvation that's currently happening is all the fault of Netanyahu and not at all the fault of Hamas. She was like, well, does Hamas have some culpability in the starvation? He's like, no. And she's like, why not? I mean, they built tunnels. So she asked a leading question, then she pushed back on his answer and then provided him with some nice Israeli talking points.
Yeah, and she was expecting, I think, Bernie to agree with her, because Bernie has previously said that you can't negotiate a ceasefire with Hamas, which
is ahistorical and bad policy.
it's just so not true. And so, I don't think he realized it. I'm hoping he didn't realize that was basically a green light for Israel to continue committing genocide, which is why AIPAC featured his comment very loudly. But Bernie has changed his position since then and has led the charge in the Senate to block weapons to Israel. But Dana Bash has not changed her position.
She's unabashed.
She's
unabashedly pro-Israel. Yeah. Genocidal.
A couple things, Dana. One is this is a product of the fact that he was Prime Minister Netanyahu was told in the early days of the war, you better have a day after plan. And now there is no day after plan, and there's chaos there. And there is an issue as access to food, and there is hunger. There is famine. It's a war zone. Second is we're coming.
Wait, hold on 1 second. So let's just pause this. There are other wars where there aren't famine. I mean, people like to talk about Russia and Ukraine a lot. I don't see the images of starving, skin and bones Ukrainian children.
Yeah, and it's not as if there's some sort of geographic hurdle to getting food in because of it's cut off by a mountainous range or other physical conditions. This is a Israeli created famine which refuses to let in aid sitting at the border, and then destroys all the infrastructure of Gaza to make life impossible. So he's saying there's a problem with access to food. It's it's a problem. It's a problem. Yeah. And by the way, this critique, this is the furthest you can get from these centrists when it comes to criticizing U.S. policy. It's we told them there wasn't a plan for the day after. The day after what? The day after you commit genocide, which you gave a green light for, which is what Biden did.
Yeah, you got to have, if you want to do a genocide, by all means, go ahead. We'll do nothing to stop you. We just ask that you do some planning ahead.
It's like Barack Obama, after he destroyed Libya, he was like, you know what? You're right. My bad. I should have had a plan for the day afterwards.
Right.
Sorry about that. Oops. But how about you never had a right to destroy the country to begin with? Can anyone consider that possible?
No. So gross.
2-year anniversary of the October 7th, where Hamas killed 1,200 people, raped and maimed women, and killed children in front of their families, and took hundreds of hostages.
Any pushback? Can't expect any pushback from Dana Bash on this, right? I mean, Aaron, you guys have reported on this a lot. The Gray Zone, there was no documented rape. There has been documented rape of Palestinians, not of Israelis on October 7th, but yes, of Palestinians since October 7th. But you're not going to get any pushback here because Dana Bash was so pivotal in creating that narrative herself.
And the idea of children being killed in front of their parents on October 7th, there was one baby who was killed on October 7th, and it was by gunfire. And let's assume it was Hamas. I mean, that's a horrible thing. But the atrocity propaganda we got about beheaded babies and babies cooked in ovens and other horrific allegations, that was all false. Yeah. And again, saying that this starts with October 7th just ignores the fact that on the morning of October 7th, Israel was waging one of the longest military occupations in the world. And all this began with the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians by Israel in 1948. So just 2 years into this, you can still just characterize this whole thing in a completely false way.
Actually, Aaron, I don't know if you've heard this, but there was a ceasefire on October 6th.
Yeah, right. Yeah, except Israel was killing hundreds of Palestinian children in both Gaza and the West Bank up until that point. 2023 at that point had been one of the deadliest years for Palestinian children. So again, this idea that everything was normal on the morning of October 7th and then Hamas just broke it, it completely erases that Palestinians were living under and are still living under a genocidal occupation.
Right.
Okay. All right. Back to Rahm Emanuel.
Coming on in 30 days from now, Rosh Hashanah. And I think the Israeli government, as they send their delegation to Cairo to negotiate, has to make a decision. Will these young men, mainly men, who are taken hostage, spend their Jewish holiday, the second year in a row, in a tunnel or in a temple? Will they be with their captors or be with their community? And it is incumbent upon the government in Israel to choose a temple over a tunnel. The IDF says it.
It's so touching.
It's
so
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the extent to which they'll criticize Israel. It's like,
Is it good for the Jews?
Is it good for the Jews? Exactly. Is it good for the Jewish captives, including Israeli soldiers? Not is it the most evil thing in the world to commit genocide for nearly 2 years now and to destroy an entire society, which is what Israel is doing in Gaza.
No, it's Operation Temple. That's what we got to do. Get them out of the tunnels and into the temples. So disgusting. I mean, how can you say that stuff out loud? And also the idea that all you need is the day after. Like, again, the takeaway is when you do a genocide, you just want to have a plan for the day after. The genocide isn't important. That's fine. It's the what are you going to do afterwards? Basically, you know what, Israel, you should be using the Pomodoro method. So you're more efficient and productive. Get a plan out of the way.
All right, let's hear from someone who's able to look at the issue of Gaza beyond just beyond just through the prism of what's good for the Jews, what's good for captive Israeli soldiers, and how about
how they're going to spend the high holidays?
Yeah, how about like what's happening to the people of Gaza, including children? More than 19,000 children have been killed by Israel throughout this genocide. And that's a conservative estimate, I think. So Catherine Russell is the executive director of UNICEF.
Aid into these children.
And as you know, the Israeli government entity that oversees the Palestinian territories, it's called COGAT, says there is no famine. They say the UN data is flawed. The Prime Minister's office says these are fabrications and due to prejudice. Can you explain how you know what you know? We are showing.
By the way, it's so hard when you're Israel because it's, what does she say? It's prejudice, right? It's really hard when you're Israel because the truth is prejudice against you. Facts, statistics, deaths that are captured on video, all that stuff it's really anti-Semitic blood libel. Reality is anti-Semitic blood libel.
Images that we know journalists have shot, journalists who live inside Gaza, because journalists are not allowed into Gaza to report. How do you know that what you're saying is fact?
Let me say two things about that. One is the IPC, which is the organization that makes this determination, is an independent organization. They're technical people. They're not political people. And they monitor this as they go. When they look at issues like what are the levels of food deprivation, what's the acute malnutrition level, how many starvation-related deaths. So it's a very technical assessment. And I think we've seen in other places that this is very accurate. I would also say, to me, it's kind of obscene that we are having these conversations arguing about whether the methodology works or not. We know children are dying, right? I am tired of a discussion about, well, are we giving the right information or not? First of all, let the international press in. Let them make determinations. I mean, we've talked about this, Margaret, of you coming. You should see it yourself. Everyone should be able to get in there. Absent that, we're going to have to rely on the data that we have, the people who were there. And I can tell you from the UNICEF perspective, our people are tortured by this. I mean, I've spoken to our staff and they are seeing children who are incredibly deprived. Many thousands of children who have had amputations and are, I mean, it's just one terrible thing after another for children. And to suggest that there's anything funny going on here is really, in my mind, just almost making the situation worse, right? Just stop the discussion, stop the arguing, and address the problem. Get food in there, take care of these children, make sure that they have the wherewithal to survive and to have a decent future.
And the Israeli government controls who gets in and who gets out.
Sounds really unreasonable. That woman, you know what she sounds like to me, Aaron?
What?
Major anti-Semite.
Yeah.
That's what she's motivated by.
Yeah. And again, this is why Israel, as we're broadcasting today, continues to assassinate journalists, because they are now in the process of destroying Gaza City, and they just don't want anyone around to document the carnage. So more than 200 Palestinian journalists have been assassinated by Israel. Recently, it was Anas al-Sharif of Al Jazeera, Gaza's most well-known living journalist. Him and many colleagues were killed. Today, it's 5 more journalists. And there's more to come according to Israel's plans because they just don't want anyone around to document the carnage that they're causing.
And obviously they pay zero consequences. So it's just like their bounties on all these basically journalists' heads. It's so disgusting and it's so unbelievable. Like we know we're going to see more murders. And that's in large part because no one does anything about it.
Yeah, like no consequences from governments, but also no real consequences from media outlets, which just every time Israel accuses, like they were Hamas, the media parrots it as if it's legit. In fact, in the case of Anas al-Sharif, he worked for Reuters as part of an award-winning story. And then when Israel killed Anas al-Sharif and said he was Hamas, Reuters regurgitated that. So Reuters slandered their own former colleague because Israel said so.
Right. And it's also useful because again, Israel loves lying and then they think that they are successful in pushing their lie and they forget that what they're actually doing is that they're revealing war crimes anyway, because you're not just allowed to assassinate someone because they're in Hamas.
Yeah. And of course, in the case of Anas al-Sharif, it's just a complete.
Right. It happens to be a lie anyway. Yes. But it just shows you how incredibly, their utter sense of impunity, which is logical because they never face any consequences. So even their lies are admissions of war crimes. They're just a distraction. And it shows that all the people who defend them, who think that they're making Israel look good, like the Barry Weisses of the world, who think that they're defending Israel, are just revealing them to be utter monsters.
Barry Weiss reportedly in talks to be acquired by CBS News because the new owner of CBS News is like the Ellison family are arch Jewish supremacists. So can you imagine our corporate media becoming even more of a stenographer for Israel? Well, stay tuned.
Yeah.
If Barry Weiss has her way and gets her payday. Okay, do you want to hear more from the director of UNICEF?
Sure. Should we end on that so that we actually end on a note of truth?
Well, I definitely want to hear something on the New York mayor's race because there's some funny, so we can. All
right, so let's skip to that. I mean, just spoiler alert that Margaret Brennan asks her about why people don't want to work with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. I think the answer to that question can be found in Aaron's nickname for them, which is the Gaza Holocaust Foundation or Gaza Holocaust Front.
Yes, and I think Max Blumenthal came up with that one. I got to give him credit, but yeah. Well, yes, the Gaza Holocaust Front is a fake group that was designed to destroy the existing aid system in Gaza and then to use aid delivery to kill more Palestinians. It's like one of the most evil things in human history, which is consistent with this whole genocide of a besieged population. So, yeah, no wonder actual aid groups don't want to work with it.
I know, it's kind of unbelievable. Yeah. All right, where are we going now? We're going to clip 14, or you want to go to clip 15?
Well, so Hakeem Jeffries has still not endorsed the Democratic Party's candidate for mayor in New York City, Zohran Mamdani, and he's been doing this dance like, oh yeah, like we're going to talk, but it still hasn't happened yet, and the race is coming up. So let's check in with Hakeem Jeffries on the state of his non-endorsement of Zohran Mamdani.
Have yet to endorse Zohran Mamdani, who, of course, your party elected about 2 months ago to be the Democratic candidate for mayor of New York City. As a New Yorker, what does he need to do to secure your endorsement?
We all know the answer. He needs to bow at the feet of Israel and AIPAC.
And say that that's what he's going to be, where he's going on his first trip. That was one of his crimes.
Yeah.
Saying it wouldn't be Israel.
Yeah. When he was the only candidate on stage, he'd be like, yeah, I'm actually not going to go visit Israel or another foreign country. I'm going to just stay in New York and take care of my people's needs. That was like an outrage. Like Cuomo was like, you see, he's an anti-Semite. And of course, Hakeem Jeffries, a complete tool of AIPAC, he shares the Cuomo position. So let's see how he handles this.
Well, we had a very candid and constructive and community-centered conversation.
Community-centered? Okay, cool.
I love that alliteration.
Yes,
Candid,
you're right. For his next book.
Constructive, community-centered conversation. That's at least 5 C's right there.
Yeah.
That could be his next book, his next best-selling book, Hakeem Jeffries.
The 5 C's, yeah.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. Candid, constructive, community-centered conversation. Wow. Which community? The AIPAC community, which you serve?
Yeah. The community of AIPAC, yeah.
A few weeks ago, before he went off to Africa. I've, of course, been on the road for the last several weeks, dealing in part with the Republican effort to try to rig the midterm elections through their gerrymandering scheme. But Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and myself are scheduled to sit down with him in the next few days. I look forward to that conversation.
What do you want to?
Translation: I'm still talking to AIPAC about whether or not I'm allowed to endorse Zohran Mamdani. Stay tuned for that. Stay tuned.
I'll let you know when I get my heads up from them, when I get my marching orders. Yeah.
It's just so awkward. Like, this is the Democratic candidate for mayor in the country's largest city, where Hakeem Jeffries is from, and he has to do a tap dance, avoiding an endorsement because Zohran Mamdani recognizes Palestinians as equal human beings. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and we should be very alert of the fact that, this is a tendency we're seeing around the country, which is like Democrats get scared of actually good Democrats, so high up Democrat officials, apparatchiks. So this just happened in Minnesota. I don't know if you saw this, but there was a mayoral Democratic candidate who was endorsed, and they have rescinded it after the delegate. They rescinded it because substantial failures in the voting process. Meaning they just don't like him. The state senator, Omar Fatah, he's too pro-Israel.
It's really hard to argue vote blue no matter who, when every time the WHO is someone who supports the notion that Palestinians are human beings, blue says don't vote for that person and let's sabotage them. You know? Yeah. All right. Well, I look forward to Hakeem Jeffries continuing to avoid giving Zohran Mamdani an endorsement, and we'll see if he's allowed to by AIPAC. Stay tuned for that.
Yes. All righty. Well, thank you guys all so much for watching. Just some really good, let's see, some nice generous super chats that we got. I just want to thank Extra Medium for that nice donation, and Wadeworth for that nice donation. We really appreciate it. And keep subscribing to the show on YouTube so our numbers grow. And of course, you can support us at usefulidiots.podcast.com for extra content.
Anything you want to announce, Katie, for your show this week?
I will be talking to, actually, speaking of Zohran Mamdani, I will be talking on one of my shows on one of my guests on this week's show is Dean Preston. He is a former member of San Francisco Board of Supervisors. And he is kind of a Zohran figure of the West Coast, if you will, in the Bay Area. So he's a DSA candidate, a Democratic Socialist, and he is trying to do kind of to San Francisco what Zohran is doing to New York. And he's also very good on blowing up the abundance lies.
All right.
So that'll be at youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show. Tuesday at 7 p.m. And then we'll have more guests as well.
All right. Well, that is Monday morning. Thank you so much for tuning in. Our website, again, is usefulidiots.podcast.com. Go there to keep us going and get bonus content. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.